All right, we're back. We are MAPD714. That's iOS development here at Centennial, and we're in the fall 2017 semester, and we are week 3, part 1 of our broadcast for intermediate level interactions. Again, we're following the book, which is Beginning iPhone Development with Swift 3. This book definitely will change next year because we're moving into Swift 4 and iOS 11. But for now, we're pretty good. So we're going to build up this app. And if you notice, I'm just going to bring the picture of the app a little bit closer so we can see what it looks like. You can see that there are some additional things. We have some labels, which we did last week. Maybe there's some weird button here in the middle. We'll talk about this. It's called a segmented control. And there's also this slider control here and a couple of boxes, text boxes, that we get input from. Now, from an Android perspective, have you done what kind of user interface items have you done with Android? Anybody can answer that? Have you done any stuff with any Android user interface stuff? What did you do?
We've created an app which in one activity we're putting some values.
That's good. So multiple activities. So we're still on single screens, and there you guys are already on multiple screens on the Android device. Why is that? Because you already know Java, right? Android development is a little easier, right? Let's face it, right? Let me go back. Android development is a lot easier, right? There's less problems, and you're already ahead. But here we're adding some extra controls. You're like, well, who cares about text boxes? Text boxes are easy. The slider, yeah, you know, sometimes you use a slider for different things. Segmented controls, these switches, and also what we're also talking about here when we go through is this phantom button that shows up depending on which switch you press, as well as what looks like some kind of action sheet and this little pop-up window. Right here's this little pop-up window, an alert that can come up as well. So iOS has those things, right? It has an action sheet. It's very different than Android from that perspective, right? But some similar functionality. What does Android have that's the analog of an action sheet? It's all kinds of stuff, right? You're going to see. But I want you always to think when you build an iOS app, typically we have multiple teams, right, in a design house. One side of the design house, all they do is iOS. And the other side, all they do is Android. Very rare do you have an Android developer and iOS developer the same person, right? Because you need to specialize, right? If you want to be good with iOS, you need to be an iOS developer. If you want to be good with Android, you need to be an Android developer. And sometimes some people, maybe the people in this room, can do both. That's rare, right? But the great thing about doing both is that you have the ability to do user interfaces across different devices. And also, you're learning some stuff on the web side now that allows you you're going to start building hybrid apps next semester. You're probably learning some TypeScript, I'm hoping now, right? No, not yet. How about Angular? Not yet. What are you learning still with on the web? What are you learning? What do you guys got? Still? Okay. Hopefully you'll still Node.js with Victor, but with Shemek, you're still learning HTML, CSS. All right, so hopefully that'll get you go. Hopefully that's just a refresher, and you'll get right into more JavaScript and TypeScript. So that's what we're going to build. It doesn't look exciting, but I have some files for you, and there's going to be there's a reason why it doesn't look exciting. So we're going to use some logo files from the book. I'm just going to drag and drop them onto Slack, our Slack channel here. So I'm just going to go whoop. And oh yeah, they need to be zipped up. I forgot. Let's zip them up. So I'm just going to go into compress them. And then we'll do that. There we go. Yay. Okay, so that'll be your logos. Please unzip those. We're going to need that for today. So everyone has the same files. There we go. On our Slack channel. Okay. So grab those so we can make the same things. Now it's good practice. Please put away your calculators for now. And we're going to build another app so you don't mess up your calculator, right? All right, and again, we're using Xcode. We're going to make a new Xcode project. So let's do that. New Xcode project. Here's my single view application, right? I'm going to continue forward with a single view application. My product name, again, I'm going to use my coding. So MAPD714-fall 2017. And it's I'm just going to call it intermediate dash user dash interactions. Really long again, just to make it crazy. Okay, cool. I'm not going to use a team for now. We don't care. I'm going to add that later. Definitely Swift. I'm going to use Centennial College as my organizational name. Now, this is interesting. If you signed up for the developer, a real developer account, not just the one here at Centennial, it'll cost you 119 still, I think, right? And that's with Apple. Please don't do that now, all right? You can, but I would hold off until the end of April next year or sometime, right? Because then if you're going to sign up as a developer, you have some experience. You may want to sign up a little earlier than that, but it costs $119 a year, and they don't care if you don't develop anything. They're not going to give you a break. It's not like, oh yeah, we see that you made no apps, so too bad. Back, we'll give you a credit. They don't do that, right? It's not based on the number of apps you made. It's based on, are you part of the party or not, right? If you're not part of the group, you're not part of the club, then you're just like everybody else, right? Okay, so you can put normally you put your developer name in there, and if you had your own organization, then you can definitely put in this reverse DNS kind of way of doing things. Swift and iPhone, we're going to keep there. Next, hopefully you've caught up by now. I'm still keeping my Xcode projects on my desktop. That's where I'm going to save it. And this time I'm going to click on Create Git Repository, because we kind of did it with command line last time, or terminal. This time I'm just going to make it here so it's automatically on my Mac inside my folder. This is the easier way to do it for sure, right? So it's this on my Mac. What was that? It's not there? Oh, you can't get to it? That's bad. I'm sorry. You can always do it manually later. Okay, we'll show you. But that should be active right there if you've gone in there. I'm going to click Create. Okay, and we've got a little project. Notice that I've got my signing issues here. I got my signing issues, right? Because I need the team. I'm going to leave it like this. We're going to fix it later when I give you the devices. We're going to take a break after part of this, get the devices, hand them out, right? And then we'll get them back afterwards. But for today, I want you to try and put this up on an actual device and see how it works. Okay, Storyboard. Let's try and match up what they're telling us. So the first thing that they tell you inside of on the PowerPoint is you have this additional folder here called assets.xc assets. Assets.xc assets. And notice that there's this app icon object, but we're going to ignore that for now. I want to take my file. So please download and unzip the files that I gave you, logos. So there's a couple things you can do. You can take each individual file and drag and drop, but I'm positive if I took the whole logos folder and I did one of these, it would probably be okay. What does it do? And let's take a look here at what it gives you. It gives me one file, apress_logo, but it gives me 3 different settings, 1x, 2x, and 3x. Without reading the PowerPoint, can anyone tell me why I need these 3 things? Different scales, different resolutions. That's what they're handled. Why don't I just scale it up? Okay, so I mean, I can scale this stuff programmatically, right? I can code it and make it twice the size. Why wouldn't I want to do that? Because it stretched. Well, what if I made it proportional? So it didn't stretch the image. What if I just increase the size? I use some kind of interpolation, right? Yeah, I can make it so there's no pixels with program. Even if I couldn't, why would I not want to program it to do it? The universal sizes. Where is it, you mean? Yeah. Well, it's not here. This is these sizes here, universal down here. This is basically for all these sizes, it's going to try and fit the best match depending on which device you're using. So Apple will actually, the Xcode will actually look at the device and say, okay, what kind of resolution do I have here? And it's probably going to try and do, for the most modern devices, 3x. Okay. For the older devices like iPhone 4, which they're out there still. Okay. And there's some in the middle. In Android, you have some of the same stuff, right? You have some high resolution files and some low resolution files. It happens in Android as well. Here, when I dragged and dropped the folder, I just got this Apress logo option right here as from the get-go. So let's use our intuition right, without looking at the details. I don't want to look at the instructions. And I want to build this app. Just no looking at the instructions. So let's go ahead. Let's take a few minutes. I want you to look at the PowerPoint or this, and let's just build this app, right? So how would I do it? What should I do first? If you take a look at it, there's, without looking at the instructions, we'll go to the instructions in a bit. But obviously up here, I have some kind of image view, which is like a picture box if you're a Visual Studio developer, right? It's another control. There's different kinds of controls. There's active controls and there's passive controls. Would you say that a label and a picture or an image view, would that be active or passive? Probably passive, right? Because it's not going to do something. Active controls is where you get user input, like buttons, like switches, like anything that I can interact with. That's more of an active control. In fact, can a button be passive? I guess you could make it passive if you don't connect anything to it. But that's, you know, those active controls are like, they're already ready to accept input. I have to tell you also, that's mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation, is that the difference between making a user interface for a device like a computer, like a laptop, that has no touch. Some laptops have gestures too now, touch, right? And they accept touch gestures for apps. But for most mobile devices, you can actually accept multiple inputs, a touch or some other gesture, like a swipe for the same control, right? So maybe I have a button, it looks like a button, I can touch it. Maybe I can swipe it too, right? You can program that in. So I want you to think of that. Now let's go back to that image question. So why wouldn't I want to programmatically change or scale the size of the image with my device? And the answer is because it takes processor cycles. Okay, that's why. The right way to do it when you program for the web, actually, let's be honest, for the web or for anything, even for games, if you're going to make games, I don't want to scale up my image to fill up the screen for games. I want to have different types of images that I can use according to the screen size, right? So whether I'm doing responsive design on the web or if I'm doing stuff here, I want different image sizes that it's done for runtime, okay? It's done during design time, not during runtime. Runtime is the bad time to do it, okay? That means I'm using processor power to do that, and I can be spending my processor doing other things. In the future, maybe it won't be so important because our phones are going to be so powerful that, you know, they're going to be able to have a little AI inside of them. I don't know, right? For now, we need to be really, you know, just like the old days with old computers, we have to watch our memory. We have to watch how we use these things, you know, performance. We have to think about those things still, which might be a good thing. So I want to build this app. What's the first thing that I should do? First thing, what would you do? Remember I talked about whenever we build an app, before we do functionality, what's the first thing that you do? User interface, right? Okay, so now I know I'm going to build a user interface. What's the first thing in the user interface I'm going to build? What's the first thing I should do? What would you do different? What would you start off with? Okay, view. The background. Okay, so I pick. Does everyone agree that I should do the background first? Okay. How do I? Wow, that's a weird color. I don't know what color that is. How can I get the color so it's perfect? Is there a way of doing that? Is there a color picker? Can you help me out? I don't understand, right? So let's go back into the app. So first of all, we want to take a look at the main storyboard, right? And now remember the outliner here on the left, you have this view controller and you have this view container right here, right? This is the view container. And if you look at here on the right, you can see that I have a background. If I click on it, I get a few options, right? I get this off. We haven't talked about this really. Here's the color picker. But if you notice, there's this RGB sliders. I can also go for the grayscale slider. I can also go for the CMYK sliders. I can also go for the HSB sliders. Lots of sliders. That's one option. Let's go back to RGB. How about this? I can also pick the color wheel. I can also do the sliders. Again, going back to this one, I get some other, you know, a list of colors or some color palettes that I can choose from, right? So there's iPhone SDK. I can also go web safe colors. I can also do crayons in a list, right? I can look at also an image with the spectrum of colors I can choose. And there's also, of course, which some people like, the crayons, right? Or the mark or the pencil crayons, right? So you can kind of choose a crayon that makes sense for you, right? And be really happy because it looks like we're playing and we're kids. So it doesn't matter which one, you always have this idea of this color picker. And if I choose the color picker, you can see that I can get, even in my interface, kind of the color that I want of whatever I'm looking at, right? Now, that's not the color that I want. I want that color. So what I'm going to have to do here is two possibilities. One, I have to, there's actually a couple of things you can do. One is you can use the built-in color, the interface. So I can pull this over like this. As long as I have this open, and here's the background, my PowerPoint presentation, or if I split my screen somehow, I could just use the color picker app and choose the background color so that it matches. So now it's a perfect match. And if I go back, that's the one way you could do it. Let's put this out. Actually, I'll close this up. All right. And you can see that that is the same color, right? That's the one way. The other way to do it is, let's suppose here on my computer, I can always get them by using other tools like Fireworks, Photoshop, Illustrator. You can sample the colors from those tools, get the actual numbers, and then use RGB values here, right? Let's just choose another color to show you this. I'm going to choose black, or this other color here, this licorice color. And I got these color sliders. You can see that I've got values, and I want to get the same color here, right? So let's say I can take this image and open it up with Fireworks. That's my favorite little graphic manipulation program. There's other free ones as well. And let's just suppose I make a new image, right? So I'm going to slap this in here. And you can see that if I take the color picker, I can choose in any graphic manipulation program. This is not unique to Fireworks. Colors, and I can see some kind of hexadecimal color. So there's the hexadecimal colors. And if I go back here to Xcode, right, I can probably put the hex color in here. Let's try this out. So I'm going to go back to Fireworks. Let's choose this hexadecimal color. So I'm going to try and I love when I have problems. Yeah, let's choose that hexadecimal color here. So I'm going to kind of copy it. There we go. And then if I go back to Xcode and it, I'm going to get the little hash mark, which I don't want. I can take that away. But notice I need for the hexadecimal colors 6 digits, right? That's hexadecimal, which should change everything when I click away, right? Now that doesn't seem right, does it? That's kind of a pucey color, where the other one was kind of this orangey color, right? Let's try that kind of, maybe I picked the wrong. Let's see how it's switching. That's closer. Let's try that again. So that's a different color. But you can see that that's another option you can do. And there's other programs out there that'll do the same thing. See if that changes it to a little. Nah, it's even worse. But the other way to do it is if you, yeah, but something's wrong. That shouldn't happen. Or it has some kind of opacity or something. Which one? Oh, yeah, because that's right. Because it's, oh, it's okay. Still seems off a little bit. I'll be honest. I personally like the color picker that's in Xcode because it gives you the exact values. It's really cool. A little bit yellow to me. I don't know if it looks yellower to you than to me, but what I see on my computer is a little bit different in color. And to prove this, if I was going to go back to the color picker, I'll look at this color here, and let's see if I can get the color picker right from here, right, without opening it up. There's a difference. I'm just going to go back down here and choose this color, and let's see if it changes, right? It's very similar. I get F6B to BF2B, right? F6B, F2B. And what am I getting in Fireworks? Fireworks, I'm getting something else, right? F71730. So it is a different color that I'm getting, right? So it depends on the program that you're going to use. Some are better than others, but even with my best work, I still can't get the same color that I can with this. So like I said, I recommend try and stick with, if you can, Xcode. Otherwise, you have to use some other program to come close. So that's the first thing. So I agree. So the first thing is let's get the color done right in the background. Next, let's take it out. I need this image view. So I know I'm going to go to my library, right, down here on the right, and type in image. Right, there's my image view. I'm going to drag and drop my image view somewhere in the middle of my screen. Image view has problems, right? Right away, image view has a problem. First of all, what the heck kind of image am I going to use here? Well, remember I dragged and dropped some stuff in Xcode Assets, these images here, and you guys should have done the same thing. If I go back to my main storyboard and choose my image, notice on the right, the image view says, okay, what's the image file that I want? Sorry, I'm a little bit too wide here. I'm going to make it a little bit, I've been playing with the width because I was showing you that little demo. I can choose a press logo. It actually comes up as one of the options. Why? Because I've included it as a resource in my project. It's now part of my project. I can look at it and get it. Now, here's something different. Take a look at this color and take a look at this color. A little different, yeah? I want to match this color, right? If your artist gave you a color and you use the color picker on some artwork and it's slightly different because maybe PowerPoint also colored it differently when it imported into PowerPoint, right? Go with the stuff that you have, right? So again, I'm going to go back to the background color. I'm going to choose the, oops. I'm going to click on the background color itself, not the pull down. Click on the color picker and then pick this one. And now you can see that it's much better, right? Much better, much cleaner and much closer. Okay, but we still got problems. What might be? Yeah, well, look, take a look at, there's a couple things here on the right that are interesting. One is this content mode, scale to fill. I'm not sure I would do that. Scale to fill. That sounds like something happening programmatically. I don't want anything happening programmatically in my code. So what other options are there? There's aspect fit, and there's also center. All right. Well, center is okay because, you know, if I change it to center, let's change the center. Can I? Okay, there's center, but now we have, you know, a really big box, right? But we have a smaller logo, and what we should try and do is change the size of our box using the rulers, my rectangles, right? To kind of match the size of my logo. Now, how do I find out the size of my logo? Well, you need some kind of idea of getting the size. Does it tell you anywhere the size of my logo? Well, let's go back to Assets, Xcode Assets, and see what it gives me. Does it give me any information here? How about here? If I click here, does it tell me this? It is for universal devices, not for iPhone. If I click iPhone, it'll specify just for iPhone, not universal. So there's unassigned. I can assign them to iPhone. So I can say, well, I want this one. I want to put these ones to my my iPhone, not my universal. Notice that I did that. Here's unassigned. Here's universal, right? Here's my Mac. If I want to specify Mac, I can put it on my Mac as well, right? Oh man, I messed up. What do I do? How do I fix that? How do I take this asset and kind of specify? Well, I can do one at a time. So I can say, well, I want it to go to universal. I can do that. Or let's go take this off again and unassign them again. Let's go back to iPhone and kind of drag this into the spots that I want them. Notice when I do that, you can see that the name of the actual item goes in the right places. For iPhone only. Now, how does this affect my storyboard? Well, what it does is it gives me more of an accurate measure. It's not a universal one. It's just for iPhone, right? But it still doesn't really tell me the width and the height of this thing. How do I find that out? Anybody have an idea? Well, okay, let's go back. What was that? Xcode Assets, okay. Click on Apris logo. Click one, let's click this one because this is the one it's going to be. Then scroll down, right? And then, oh, 516 by 240. That's huge, right? But that's why it's 3x, right? Because most modern iPhones, right, have a very high resolution, especially the new iPhone 8, iPhone X to come. You know, they have quite a bit of resolution. But a good measure is looking at the smallest one, which is 172 by 80. Smallest one. Because in my storyboard, it uses the smallest one for the absolute resolution in terms of spacing, right? So if I do 172 by 80, and if I go back to main storyboard, right? And if I look at here, if I look at the ruler part, I can actually make it exactly the width that I need. So for example, this should be 2, right, by 80. That's the width and the height. Let's change those to match the size of my label. Why? On my image. Why? There's no scaling and there's no extra container space, right? That's one thing I want to try and do. Now I can center it by using my little guides as much as I want, right? Should I use my constraints now? I should do my constraints now, or should I wait till after? What do you recommend? Should I wait till after?
No.
Or do my why now? Can you tell me why you just built a bunch of interfaces for my calculator that I'm getting about? Why constraints now? Why is that a good thing? Relative to this? Okay. Let's try not to do it. Let's try not to put any text, no constraints. Let's see what the difference is, okay? Because we want to try and experiment. This is the part of learning, right, that we're going to try and do. So let's say no constraints. Okay, so I got my thing. Now what else do I need? I need a couple of labels and a couple of text fields. Let's just do this. So I'm going to go here and grab labels, just what I see. So I say label. Right, here's a label. I don't know where this is going to be, but it's probably closer up. I'm just going to try and see what I can see on the image. I don't have any specs. I also see that the label is called name. Might as well put that in there, right? So I see what it looks like. So there's name. And I'm going to expand this a little bit. Does this look like the right size? Does this, and this looks bold. This one doesn't look bold. I can change the font. I also want the alignment to be right aligned. That looks like it's right aligned. Okay, so right aligned. And I can change the font to make it a little bit bolder, so a little bit kind of darker. That looks a little closer to this. I don't know. And let's use option drag to make another label right underneath that one. We can do that. Hey, question, should I do that now or should I do the text box first? Let's undo that. Let's do the text box first. So if I go down here and if I say text field, that's what it is. Here's my text field. That's a new control. So text field is where we get input from the user. So far for your calculators, you're controlling the input from the user because there's only buttons and the user can't enter anything. Okay, that's what it shouldn't be. So let's get text field and drag it so that it kind of aligns with my label. And let's drag this thing just like it shows. It looks to me that the label, the text field is kind of most of the way over here on this side to the edge. Label doesn't really look aligned. Let's kind of align this so it's in the middle. And then we can shift click both of them to kind of see what spacing it looks like by eye, that they're almost perfect. I'm not measuring. I'm just using my eye right now, okay? And then if I press option drag, I can get both of those things, right? So they can save me time. Because when, you know, we're busy people, right? We're busy people. We don't want to spend a lot of time when we're working and spend our boss's money, right? Trying to build things slowly. We can build things a little quicker. Again, I'm using my eye. And this label has to change. Curious and question for you. Which one should I have done first? Name or number, and why? I have two labels, name and number, and then I have a text box next to it. Which one should I do first? Why number? I didn't do it right. But why didn't I do it right? I should use number because number is bigger, which means my text box would have been pushed over more, which means I would have had less changes than I have to do right now, right? Because look, if I go back here, the name is not going to fit number. If I put number in here, right? Number going to be kind of closed off, right? Which means I'm going to have to expand this up. Let me make this a little bigger so you guys can see. All right. And let's get rid of this panel right here, right? And let's get rid of this panel, and let's just look at this, what I have right here so you can see it nice and close. All right, cool. So you can see that I would have to make this, I would have to move this over. So I have to change the size of this thing, which means I have to change the size of this thing, which I have to change the alignment of this thing, right? That's a lot of changes. And I could have avoided all that if I did the number first, because this is the bigger field. Do I have a colon here? I do here. It looks so far so good. Looks like I have less space here than I have here. Maybe what I can do is I can pull this label just over so it touches the left somehow. This is just design choices, which means I might have a little bit more room. So I'm just making some minor adjustments here, guys. And again, same thing. I'm going to try and align it with the other label there. This is this. You can see the blue labels align, right? Basic changes, little changes, just to make it more aligned. Okay, good. So we got name and number. I don't have any things. Now I want to add some kind of slider control. This is new. So let's bring back that control box over here and type slider. Go. Slider. There's my slider control. It's pretty big. There it is. Okay. And I want to make it so that it is the same size. It goes kind of from a number. There's a little label here that looks like, and there's no label on this side. Okay, so let's drag this to the left. And the label appears kind of right in the corner. I'm just going to drag this label down because I already have a label. I might as well use it. And modify what I have. I'm going to change this to, say, 50 for now, just to give me an idea of what it looks like. I'm also going to make it centered as opposed to right aligned. That's what right align was doing, right? And oops, I pull this in on the left here, right? And see how far it is. It's kind of all the way to the left. I'm just trying to match the user interface design here. And this control looks like when I pull it, it looks like it kind of goes all the way to the middle, which kind of aligns with the middle. Would you agree? But it's way down. Look how far. I got lots of space here. I don't have a lot of space here, which means it's probably going to be, these two controls are probably going to move way down the control, right down here. I'm just using my eye. It looks almost right. It might be a little bit up that I have to nudge it. And I can nudge it with my arrow keys, right? I can use my arrow keys on my Mac to nudge it up and down. That's called nudging. Nudge, 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 right? Up and down. Also, you know what? I'm noticing that, well, maybe it's not so bad. Okay, so that's pretty cool. I'm getting my interface done pretty quickly. And that's how I want you to work. If I do a little test with you, right? Midterm sometime, and I say, okay, build this, right? You're going to get an assignment that looks like something like what you got, but it's going to be in-house assignment, in-class assignment to build something in class, right? Okay, great, fantastic. And you only have 2 hours to build the whole thing, let's say. First thing you should do is build a user interface, then build your logic afterwards, because user interface is worth something. All right, now I got this thing. It's called a segmented control. Okay, so let's find this where that is. Segmented control. Segmented. Here it is. My segmented control. And I got 2 parts, first and second, right? And it looks almost exactly like we see in the picture here, but it says here something like switches and button. All right, switches and buttons. So I'm going to kind of center it here. And it's a little bit almost the same. I'm just trying to make it so it kind of moves up the line, right? So let's put in switches and buttons. So I want to, how do I do that? Well, if I double click here, I can say switches, right? And on the right side, I can say button if I double click, right? And I can modify my segmented control that way. You can see that I have 2 segments. Look up here, right? I have 2 segments. I have switches and button, and I can add more segments as I like. Notice I only have 2. I can add 3, 4, 5, 6, however many segments I want. Let's go back to 2. Okay. Why segmented controls? This is actually one of the first controls they made way back in iOS 4, right? And the reason for this was this is one of the ways they made their toolbars back then, right? They made a little toolbar of segmented control, and then you can choose, you know, between one option and another. Very web-like, actually. All right. So we got our segmented control, and then we have our 2 switches, one on the left and one on the right. Let's make switches. So let's get those. Switch. Here's a switch. Pull it in here. Again, I'm just using my eye. I'm not really pulling in any kind of intelligence here, right? And I'm going to option drag to get the other side of the switch. So there's both switches. Make sure that it's aligned with the right side, the right little blue guide. Okay. And I'm going to zoom out to see what I got. Okay, it's pretty quick, right? See? That's all we can see. There's other stuff we've missed, okay, because we can't see that stuff. But right now, we've got some functionality, all right? Now, if you actually go through the PowerPoint, it actually tells you there's some additional things that we didn't get done. For example, there's this button that's here that's only going to appear when we click button. but it's going to be hidden when we click switches, right? And the switches are going to be hidden when I click switches, and or the switch are going to be when I click switches, the switches are going to show, and the button's going to be visible. So what do I do? Well, one thing you could do is put the button in place right now. Let's put button with my button control. I'm going to drag and drop the button. I'm going to put the button right on top of the other switches, right here like this. And I'm going to drag the switches, the button, so it's all the way this way. Hey, automatically we have some things to do here, right? We're not finished. And it looks like the button says do something. So I'm just going to double click here and just type in do something. We also have a really weird background for the button, right? Now, they brought in an image. You can also bring in an image. I'm not going to do that here just to save time, right? But if you follow the what they tell you in the book, it tells you, but I want to put a background on the button. How do I put a background on the button? It's different than the background, right? If I choose background, right? Here's my text color. Here's my shadow color. What do I do if I want the background of the button to be different? What do I do? That's a little different. Anybody have an idea? Well, if I go all the way down to tint, is that it? Or how about background, this little X, right? Now we're back to this again. So I want to kind of make a gray background for the button. That's what it looks like. Notice that it covers the switches for now, right? And by default, notice that I can make it hidden, right? So the drawing is hidden. Let's see what happens when we draw it. So I want to run this thing. I want to target iPhone instead of iPhone 7. I want S7S. I want to type iPhone 7, just the 7 by itself. There's iPhone 7. That's the one I'm targeting. I'm also targeting iPhone 7 on the view as iPhone 7 on the bottom left-hand corner here. So I'm targeting iPhone 7, iPhone 7. And let's run our simulator and see what happens. I didn't put any constraints. Okay. So it runs. I've just got the sound turned off so you can't hear it. Normally makes another little ping sound. And when it's coming up pretty darn large. Right? And I know what I got to do. I've got to go into scale, and I want to go back down to something like 50% or lower, maybe even lower, just so you can see it all. Probably too small, but that's okay. At least as I can see this thing come up, I want to see what I get. That's not bad, right? Okay, I want to check to see what happens when and let's make it a little bigger just to see if there's a bigger scale for you guys to see, because there's not much happening in the bottom part. So this doesn't change this number. I want this this is the functionality I want. When I change this, I want this number to change, right? That's my slider control. When I switch the buttons, I want to show you the buttons or the big button or the switches, depending on which one I switch. That's the challenge today, right? Okay, cool. And I haven't done any constraints yet. Constraints are not there. It's auto constraints right now. Okay. But, okay, cool. Let's see what happens when I put this, stop running it. And let's say if I put this hidden. So my button is hidden. Does it draw it still? Is that enough? Let's see what happens here if I put the button is hidden by default. I'm doing this all in control. So no, that's good, right? So I want to hide the button because my default is switches. How do I know that? Because, let's just stop this. You can make whatever default you want, by the way. Notice if I go back to the switch, to this segmented control, my title is switches, right? I have segment 1 and segment 2. Notice that my behavior is selected, enabled and selected, right? It shows your alignment. It shows that it's enabled. The state is selected, right? I can also make it highlighted, but where the heck does it say that it is switches, not button? Well, it's the order that I put them in, right? Look at the order, right? 0, it's like an array. 0 is the first one, and button is the second one. What if I wanted the button to be highlighted? I could switch this to button. Notice I have my segment button. And if I run this now, it should show me, hopefully the button is going to be selected and the switches are not going to be selected. Let's see if that's true. No, right? It should look like this, right? That's what I was hoping. So that didn't really do anything. That just allows me to change the name, right? Oh, wait, look down here, selected. So if I go from segment 0 to segment 1, and if I click select, selected, now it does it here, program, kind of like in the view, and then we should see it. So we can actually switch, or we can actually select any one of them. Do you guys see a problem with this layout? I do. I don't like this. Look how difficult it is to see this stuff, right? Maybe you want to put a different color on the buttons, right? And can we do that? Now, that's not part of the layout. If you actually look at the PowerPoint presentation here, you can see that they just kept blue and whatever the background is. Well, let's change ours a little bit, just because I think this is a little bit too difficult to read. How would I change? Let's put this back to switches, make that selected. That's cool. How do I change the tint? Is it this? Make it white. No, that's not it. That's just the tint of the button. So undo that one. So that can't be it. Where is it? Did I miss it? What the heck? Right? Where is it? Right? Here's background. How about background? That's background of the button, right? I mean, let's make the background, I don't know. Let's make it white, right? Or black, licorice color, right? Well, that's the background of the color. That's the background of the button. So that's not it. Come on, where do I see that color for the actual front part of the segmented control? It must be somewhere that it has that, right? Well, unfortunately, sometimes we have to use a little bit of logic to do the same thing. Notice that there isn't a way of doing that inside of our controls here. There's other things we can do, right? We can measure it. We can do other things. Sometimes you might think that they're hidden here, but just from the get-go, when you look at this, there isn't a way, when you first look at this, to change the color. There's ways of doing background. Now, what if I open this up? If I click on the plus, you can see that I introduced a variation based on compact, regular, or any. This is interesting. This allows me to change the my color of my control or something based on the size of my device. That's what the plus stands for here. Same thing with this one. It'll give me the same kind of control, right? Whether it's opaque or hidden, clears graphics context. What does it do? And if there's any stretching involved at all. All right, so not a lot of control here for this one. Here's the style, plain, bordered, right? And there's also bar, right? Let's see what bar looks like when I run this thing. So I'll say bar. So even though it looks like this here, does it give me something different over here? Is there a reason for this style? Right? It doesn't really do much for me, right? It doesn't really do much for me at the get-go when I look at it. I'm just exploring like you, right? So here's plain. State, momentary, number of segments, and so on. Okay, and if there's an image, I can put an image in the background too. So I can make this my own, just like I can make my button. How about the button though? If I click away and click back at the button does have a text color. Look, here's a text color. So the button definitely has a text color. I can change the text color. Blue doesn't do it for me. Let's change the text color to white, right? So that's something like that. Maybe instead of the do something being this, let's make it also bolded, right? So you can change it from regular to bold. Maybe that's going to help. Maybe I also want to make it a bigger font, right? For the button, just so I can so it stands out. And notice it resizes the entire button too. Do something that's more legible to me, right? All right, so we've got some basic controls. Now we need to tie them together, right? And then we'll take a short break, okay? Because it's going to be 8:30 by the time we're done. All right. Questions. What controls and what type of connections do we want to make? We want to make outlets or actions or both? And which types are going to be outlets and which types are going to be actions? Okay. All right. I like Dustless. What about the 50? Yeah, the 50 needs an outlet, right? Because that needs to change, right? Here needs some kind of action. And this is wrong, guys. See this default value? See how it says 0.5? Let's make it 50. And now you're going to see that our maximum value is going to be 100, let's say, and our minimum value is going to be 0. I think we should do that. Now, notice how the actual button itself changed to a different size. So this is going to go from 0, right? And if you want to make it from 1 to 50, you can make it 1 to 50. I'm going to make it 0 to 50, right? It might say something different for me, but notice that's something different in the slider than any other control we've touched so far. We can also use two different images, a minimum image and a maximum image if you want to change it. So you can actually change the image as you go from minimum to maximum. It's kind of neat. There's the minimum track and the maximum track, lots of control, right, that you can put in the buttons to change the slider so it looks different, right? Lots of gradient control, some really cool things with the slider. Again, this is scaled to fill, right? So it kind of scales to fill. I can also make it so that it is centered and other things. We'll leave it as is for now. Alpha, we didn't talk about alpha. What's alpha? Anybody know? Opacity. It means that if I put an alpha of 1, it's 100% opaque. I can see it. But if I slide down the scale, I can make it more and more transparent until you can see the background. I don't want that. I want 100%. Unless there's a really good reason to make your controls transparent, you don't want to. You want to make them opaque. It doesn't make sense, right? Okay, so that's pretty cool. We've got this running. We know what we need. How about this funky thing here? We have this segmented control, right? And that's going to be a different kind of action than anything else, because it's almost like we have two buttons in one. We need to kind of detect which option in the segmented control was selected, right? And then we have this button here. That's neat thing for that. And then we also have, even though we can't see it, we can always bring up our switches. Here's our switches. We can kind of highlight those switches and hide the button if I don't want to see it and so on, to kind of do a drag and drop. All right, so let's do this thing. So how do I get my code up? I want to see my code on the right-hand side. I don't care about this stuff anymore because I've already done my UI. What do I do on this side to bring up my code, my view controller up here on the right? Anybody? This is all review. I'm just going through it because maybe some of you don't know. I'm clicking on my assistant editor, right? Do I need this part right now? Not yet. Just to give myself more real estate, I'm going to turn it off. I'll turn it back on. Sorry. I'll turn it back on later. Right, because we're going to need it for the button. All right, so here's my view controller. Notice it has a few pieces of some comments on the top. Comments for your project. I want you to put in the name. Your name on the top is already there, but if I didn't want to do this, if I don't want this, and I want to do my own, Swift accepts a couple things. Does it accept this? This is just like, old C-style comments. It accepts those, right? So if I kind of go to the top, and if I put in my own comments, right, anything I write here is going to be a comment. For example, something like, and I usually like to put a star in front of it, my name, right? I know it's long. Sorry, guys. The date of my project, which is September 20th. So I might put that in there. So September 20th, 2017, right? And then some kind of maybe my student ID, if I had one, right? Put in your student ID. Like I want to put a number like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever my student ID would be. Your student ID would go here. And then some kind of description, right? For this this app, what am I building? I'm building a intermediate, user interactions demo app. That's what I'm doing with it. And then maybe some kind of version, right? Which I'm going to put in something like 0.1. The first thing I do with my 0.1, before I do any kind of actions and outlets, right? We did a lot of stuff, is built basic UI, user interface. That's my first thing for 0.1, my view controller, right? I can save that now. I built some basic things there. And if you notice, if I expand this so you can see more of it, it'll just look like this. I think this is an okay header, guys. Nothing wrong with that. And you should put that in your view controller. I'd like you to for your files. And for Android, when you program in Android, put yourself a little comment that shows you who you are. It's good practice. And any kind of code. I don't care about this right now. I don't care if I did receive memory warnings. So we'll get rid of that. And now I'm ready to put it up on source control before I do any functionality. Why is that? Why would I go into GitHub now? And I haven't added constraints. I didn't do that yet. I've just built my UI. And before I do add any constraints, I want to put it on source control. Why? Why wouldn't I do it after constraints? I can always step back if something messes up. That's why, right? I always want to give myself a way out, right? It's a backup, right? So at the very minimum, let's get rid of all this stuff. I don't care about all this. right? And I just want to clean up my code and have the simplest way of doing things in my ViewController. And I want to put it up on GitHub. I want to go to source control here. Notice that I have this right here where it says configure, right? I want to configure my remote. I don't have a remote because I never created a GitHub repository yet, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to click plus anyway, add remote. It's going to call origin, and now I'm going to leave it there while I go to GitHub and get a new repository. So I'm going to go to GitHub now. I'm going too fast. It's okay. You can see it on the video, or you can try it. I'm going to go here to the plus, make my new repository. I'm going to choose the right organization because you guys are Centennial, right? And I'm going to try and name the repository the same as my project. So MAPD-F2017 dash something like intermediate dash user dash interactions. There we go. Just like the book. Create repository. Now when I have my repository created, I have this, which is my remote connection. This is what I need here. This piece. I'm going to copy it. I go back to here, paste it in, and then add remote. Now that I have a remote, I've just added it in there. My project. I'm going to click done. Okay, now I'm going to do an actual commit. So I'm going to go source control. I'm going to commit. And this, what I'm going to do in here, let me cancel that for a second. Best thing to do is grab this thing right here, which is built basic UI, right? That's my commit. So this is like my version. I want to keep track of this, the last thing I did here. Source control, sorry, commit. Put my commit message. These are all the changes, right, on the left-hand side, right? I'm also going to push to my remote here. And I'm going to commit 10 files and push. It's going to ask me to log in for the first time. And it shouldn't ask me again. I did it right. Done. If I check GitHub, if I refresh, you can see now that I have 2 files, and this is what your GitHub repo should look like. There should be no other files in this part. If you have other things in here, or if you have another folder before this one, okay? Does this make sense to you? So I'll review. We've done this a couple times now, right? A couple weeks in a row. This is the 3rd week. We're week 3 today. And we've just done this thing yet another time. All right, cool. So we've got our Git repository, and we're going to finish our basic stuff. Let's see if I can give me some functionality, right? I'm not sure if we can finish this all before the break, but let's try. Back to Xcode. All right, so I need to make these outlets and actions like we talked about. I want to try, this is a class, right? So for people who've never done object-oriented programming in the class, I want to think of it like this. This is where my methods are, right? So these are all my methods. So these are all methods. You can think of it as, and then Swift calls them functions, but it's fine. But I'm just putting some comments in here so you can see my methods, right? I'm just partitioning my code a little bit, just being organized, okay? And let's say down here, I want to put in all of my outlets, right? So we're going to put outlets up here. Okay, there's my outlets. This is where I want to target everything so I can organize my code a little bit so you understand where everything's going, right? Okay, cool. And I want to put my actions down here. So I want to say actions. But these are action methods, yeah? Aren't they? That's really what they are. Okay. And these are kind of class methods. These are inherited methods. That's what they are. So we'll call them inherited methods. That's what they are. And I'll take some of this stuff away. I'm just putting these lines so you can see the divisions. I'm not saying I recommend them. I'm just putting them in so you can see the divisions. Save. Cool. All right. So I've got some spaces. I want to control drag from this one, the first one, in here, right? Underneath outlets and let go. It's a UI text field I want in here for sure, right? But is it an outlet or an action? Why is it an outlet and not an action? User's going to enter some stuff inside, right? And then don't I have to detect when something's happened, my name and my number? It says name and number. Maybe I need something in there. Should I make an outlet or an action? Or do I need both? Let's make an outlet for now. So call this my name text field, right? So name text field. I'll name the text field the name text field. I'll make connect, and I'll make sure that the UI text field type is there. Yay. Control drag, make that an outlet. And we'll do the same thing. Instead of name text field, we'll say number text field. I'm using camel case here. So the lowercase for the first word and uppercase for both the second and the third word. Number, lowercase, text field, capitals. All right. That's just a convention that we use for people who've never programmed before. Connect, right? So there we got 2 outlets. All right, cool. We definitely need an outlet for this one, like we said, and maybe a couple of actions for the rest. Let's get an outlet for the 50. So this is kind of our slider label. That's what it is, our slider label outlet. Control drag, right? We're going to call this slider label and connect. Okay. Are we good? Are you with me? Very simple, right? Take a look what it's doing. It's actually declaring the types. This is the way we declare types in Swift without this part. You say var, it's a variable declaration, the name of the variable, and its type, if you know it. Okay? Its type that's on the right-hand side. And then you should probably initialize the variable to some value because Swift won't initialize it for you. Just like C++. C++ doesn't initialize anything for you. Neither does Swift. So we have to give this explicitly unwrapped exclamation mark saying, hey, we're going to get some value here from the name and number. Okay, cool. Let's get the action methods going, and we'll take a break, I think. So I want one for this slider action, right? So when on slider something, right? What's on slider changed? I think we're going to call it on when the slider changes. I'm making it up, right? You can call it whatever you want. But I want to call it like on slider changed, right? So let's move this in there. So control drag down here. I'm just organizing it. If you really want, you can put, you know, the action anywhere. Notice it's of type UI slider. I want to move it from outlet to action. And I definitely want to keep that it's a UI slider, all right? That's the type. Looks like it says there's different kinds of events. And the one I'm looking at is if the value changed. That's the default event for the slider. You can choose other ones. Okay, but value change the one I'm listening for. Okay, and we're going to call this, right, the on slider changed, and then connect it. It gives me an empty action method. That's what it does here. On slider changed event. Okay, we're going to give a space just down here. That's where I want to put the next one. I want to take my segmented control. Right? On segmented control changed. That's what I'm going to call it. Right? Control drag. Right? I'm going to make it an action. A UI segmented control. Right? Because I want to tell the type. And I'm going to say on segmented control changed. I can make it as long as I want, by the way, guys. I'm just going to prove that to you. There we go. And it's good to be descriptive. Okay, on segmented control changed. Did I make a mistake? Segmented. All right, how do I change that? Can I right click and not in this version? I can't refactor rename. I can't, even if I wanted to. It'll give me an error, right? In Xcode 8, the answer is no. Xcode 9 coming up, right? Which is with iOS 11, you can refactor. But here we cannot. So what do I need to do? I need to disconnect it and reconnect it and change the name and all that kind of stuff. But I can rename it here. What if I just renamed it? If I just went like, oh, I just want to rename it as a segmented control. Is that enough? Well, I don't trust that. And if I hover over it, you can see that there's no connection now. See, there's no, it's an empty circle now because I changed the name. Let's undo that. Right? So if I go back, is it connected again? No, like I messed up the connection, right? And the way to change this is to check it, is to go to your, let's go back, bring this up again, just for a brief second. This is the connections button on the right, and you can see that I have this one connecting, but I just want to kill this one again. So let's just kill this connection, right? I've killed it, no connection. We can hide this again. And now that I want to rename it, I could do it like this. I could function first if I knew how to write it, and just control drag, right? So I can control drag to an existing function, and then now we're connected. So if you made a mistake, don't worry about it. We also have the do something button. So I want to kind of bring that in. So let's say control drag. So on do something, I'll call it do something clicked or pressed. Okay, it's a UI button. I'm going to make it an action. Make sure it's a UI button. By the way, this is different than in the book. I'm just making it up as we go because we have to kind of make it so that is, you know what's happening on your user interface. Okay, cool. What about the other controls? I can't reach them. How do I control drag them? Well, let's see if I can do this. If we can intuit this. So I got my outline. Can I drag from the outline to my to here, to my editor, to my ViewController? Is that possible? Let's try it. So I'm going to grab this switch, which is the left switch, and I'm going to control drag into this area here. Let's see if I can do that. So control drag. Yeah, it works, right? So even if I can't see the control here, I can use my outliner to drag the control in. So I'm going to make this an action, switch action, and we're just going to call this the we're going to use a shared event handler here. So both switches. I'm going to use one event handler to handle both switches, just like we did last week. So we'll say on switch changed. Connect. And the same thing goes with the right switch. This is the right switch. I'm just going to control drag into the same function. So now both functions, the right switch and the left switch, and I'll hide this for a second so you can see that, both the right switch and the left switch are activated or trigger this event to fire. Okay, cool. I think we've got most of our outlets. There might be some other ones we need, but we have most of our outlets and our actions. We haven't added any kind of constraints yet. And again, I want to put another commit on GitHub. Why? Because I did all my connections. Makes sense, right? So let's do this now. Let's go and put source control. So source control, now there's two things I want to change. I want to change this. This is 0.2. And up here, I want to change from built basic UI to added outlets and actions, right? That's pretty clear what I'm doing here. So I'm going to copy this piece. And notice I'm changing this. I'll show you why I'm doing this in a second. I'm going to go back to here, right, where it says commit. I'm going to put my commit message in there, added outlets and actions. I'm going to push this change up to GitHub with 2 of the files that have changed. Yay! And it didn't ask me to log in this time. Now let's take a look and see what I've got. I've got the first commit, which is initial commit that was done by Xcode. Another one that's built my basic UI, and another one that's added outlets and actions. Let's see the difference. Well, here's my basic UI. Look, I get to see all the changes, the differences in my code, right? Lots of differences here. Here's the assets. You can see everything that's been added. The green things are all the additions. This is all happening in the background that you can't see, right? Whenever you play around with the storyboard, right? These are all the things that have been, look, I added all this stuff and it shows down here that it says version 0.1 built basic UI. Okay, cool. That's the first one. That's this one, built basic UI. Okay, let's go to the next commit. Now, if you notice, it added some connections. This is all in XML format, if you notice. So the same stuff you're going to do when you're going to have access to doing with Android, you can see the XML in Android. Here, it's happening in the background, right? So there's some XML going on, right? Adding some different controls. It's defining where the control is, the destination, and so on automatically for you. And then further down, you can see that, look, Here's my version, 0.2. I added outlets and I removed built basic UI. So you can see that the changes here as well, right? Of the things I changed, and you can see that what I've changed in my ViewController. This is the file, viewcontroller.swift. Make sense? That's pretty cool, right? So it's pretty good that I've done that. All right. I think at this point, what I'd like to try and do is take a small break. We've gone, it's about 8:29. I've gone pretty much an hour and a bit with some looking at your user interfaces and all that stuff. I think it's a good time if we can get any coffee, maybe some McDonald's treat. I don't know if you want to do that kind of stuff. 15, 20, let's say 20 minutes, right? To give you guys a chance to do that. When we come back, we'll connect the logic. And then the last part of our day, I want to give you some time to work in class on your calculator and talk about the logic that you have to do for next week. Okay? So we'll do that. All right?